Want to be able to multiply out all the brackets? Watch on! If you're comfortable with multiplying out two brackets, how do you feel if you get confronted by something like this, or this, or this? In this video, we'll learn how to tackle problems where we need to expand more than two sets of brackets, and you'll soon realise that they are not as scary as they look. You'll even learn a couple of fancy pants words along the way. So, to take the fear out of any of these daunting questions, just look on them as a series of chunks that need multiplying together. So each group of brackets or parentheses is a chunk. And so, if you have any single factors, they can also count as a chunk, and you can draw brackets around them if you really want to. In these few examples, we have 3 chunks, 4 chunks, and 7 chunks. Now, if you've seen our previous video on the sticky finger method, and there's a link in the description, you'll already know how to multiply out 2 chunks easily. So how do we approach 3, 4, or even more chunks? Let's first take a look at some fancy pants properties of maths, which you'll already know without even realising it. The first property is known as the commutative property of multiplication. This is the fancy pants mathemachicken way of saying A times B equals B times A. What does that mean? Well, it just means that if you're multiplying 2 things together, you'll get the same answer whichever way round you do it. 3 times 5 is the same as 5 times 3. They're both 15. Pretty obvious. The second fancy pants property is the associative property of multiplication. It states that when multiplying 3 things together, if you do A and B first and then multiply by C, you'll get the same answer as if you did B and C first and then multiply by A. Here's an example with 2 times 3 times 4. Doing A times B first, we have 6, which finally multiplies by 4 to give 24. If we did B times C first, we have 12. This then becomes 2 times 12, which is 24. The same answer, which again is fairly obvious. So why am I telling you this, and why is it useful? Well, it shows us that we can break down a multiplication of 3 or more things into a series of multiplications of 2 things. And we already know how to multiply 2 chunks together with our sticky finger method. By the way, I learned all these fancy pants properties from my maths teacher, Mr. Turtle. He had a strange name, but he taught us well. Let's look back at one of our examples. Here we have 3 chunks. We now know that we can multiply any 2 of these chunks together to get closer to our answer. So let's try chunk A times chunk B. We then know that we'll be able to multiply our answer by chunk C to get our final answer. So here we go, starting with A times B, which is x plus 6 times x minus 3. Get our sticky honey finger out on the x and point with our pen through the right chunk. We have x times x, which is x squared, and then x times minus 3, which is minus 3x. Okay, move our sticky finger to plus 6 and go through the right chunk again. 6 times x is 6x, and 6 times minus 3 is minus 18. Let's now collect like terms together to keep things as simple as possible. So we've got minus 3x plus 6x, which is 3x. We can put brackets around this as our new single chunk, which we can now multiply by chunk C. Now, I've got 3 items in this left chunk and only 2 items in the right chunk. So I could crack straight on and move my sticky finger, and I'd need to move it to these 3 places. However, remember from the commutative property that 3 times 5 is the same as 5 times 3? This means I can have these chunks in whatever order I want and get the same answer. Therefore, I'm going to swap them round because this means I only need my sticky finger in 2 places, which I prefer. Okay, let's go through this with our sticky finger starting on x. x times x squared is x cubed. Then x times 3x is 3x squared. And finally, x times minus 18 is minus 18x. Let's move our sticky finger to the 2. Remember, the plus or minus sign is part of the item, so we'll be multiplying things by minus 2. Minus 2 times x squared is minus 2x squared. Minus 2 times 3x is minus 6x. And minus 2 times minus 18 becomes plus 36, because the two negatives become a positive. So we have our single answer now. The final step is to collect like terms to neaten it up a bit. We only have one x cubed term, so let's write that. Then, for x squared, we've got plus 3 and minus 2, which is plus 1x squared. And obviously we don't write the 1. Then, for x's, we've got minus 18x and minus 6x, which combine to give minus 24x. And finally, we are left with our constant of 36. There we go. I just want to prove to you that it doesn't matter what order you do this in. Stick to your method and you'll get the right answer. This time, let's do b times c first. So x minus 3 times x minus 2. Sticky finger on the x, we get x squared and minus 2x. Then, moving our sticky finger along, minus 3 times x is minus 3x, and minus 3 times minus 2 is plus 6. Collecting our x's together to give minus 5x, we have a single chunk for b times c. I'll now multiply this by chunk a, and I won't bother moving the smaller bracket to the sticky side this time. Let's go through with our sticky finger on x squared. X squared times x is x cubed, and then x squared times plus 6 is plus 6x squared. Move our sticky finger along, and minus 5x times x is minus 5x squared, and minus 5x times 6 is minus 30x. So the final move of our sticky finger, and we get 6 times x, which is 6x, and then 6 times 6, which is 36. We've got our initial answer, so let's collect like terms. The x cubed is on its own. Then we have plus 6x squared minus 5x squared, which is 1x squared. And for the x's, we have minus 30 and plus 6. These combine to give minus 24x. And this 36 is on its own. So there you go. Our two answers match, despite going a completely different route. I wanted to show you have nothing to fear here. As long as you use the sticky finger approach and remember that the plus or minus signs are part of the object, then you can be really confident that you will get to the right answer in the end. How you get there is totally up to you. You can choose whatever order you like. Here are a couple of practice questions for you to try in your own time. I've provided the answers too, but you'll have to turn either your screen or your head upside down to read them. If you're still getting stuck, let me know in the comments and I'll see if I can help. So congratulations! You can now multiply out any number of brackets using your sticky finger superpowers. You're a hero! To be a real superhero, why don't you click on that subscribe button so you don't miss out on future videos? And if you fancy a bit of kryptonite, a more difficult skill is factorising, which is going the opposite direction. So, instead of multiplying out brackets, we look for common factors in order to put things back into brackets. Why don't you check that out next? Have a great day, and until next time, I'll see thee.